Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for Monday, March the 9th. All aldermen are present and accounted for the exception of Vice Mayor Rocky Yonda, who is out of town and made the city administration aware of that a couple of weeks ago. So we do have a quorum this evening. We welcome all those that are in attendance this evening, and thank you for braving the wet weather. It sounds like it's raining from the drops on the roof this evening. Just a couple of things about tonight's agenda. We have two opportunities for public hearings this evening. One as it relates to a zoning change, and the other an amended outline plan as well. This evening our invocation will be led by IT Director Tony Fisher. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Forrest Owens. And prior to that, I'd like to take a moment to just say thank you to J.B. Boyd Mays, who passed away last week, for a life of service to the city of Germantown. Boyd Mays served as an alderman in Germantown from 1968 to 1980 and flew countless bomber missions over Asia, I believe the Pacific, during World War II, part of our greatest generation. I'd like for you to ask you to rise, and we will honor a moment of silence for Boyd Mays. Thank you.
Please pray with me. Loving and gracious God, we thank you today for all of your blessings, for our city, for our staff members, and for our mayor and board. As we meet tonight, be with this board in their deliberations and help them be wise in their decisions. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech, and help our leaders to make decisions that would be pleasing to you. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda this evening. And before we adopt and set the agenda, I will just make the general announcement that at the conclusion of Alderman Liaison reports, I will call on Chief Selberg to come forward and give us an update on the coronavirus and some of the activities in the county as well, to give us a brief update for the community and for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Item 4 on the agenda, setting and adopting the agenda. The agenda was presented to the public in advance of this meeting. During executive session this evening, the board met at 5:30 and thoroughly reviewed all items on the agenda. There was some discussion about moving some items. Is there a motion to set the agenda?
Move to approve.
Mayor, I'd like to actually make a motion to move items 13 and 14 to the preliminary agenda.
That's fine. If you could hold your motion for your amendment for just a moment.
Thank you, sir.
The agenda was brought forward by Alderman Sanders, and he made the motion. I did not hear if there was a second. Is there a second? Alderman Sanders made the motion. Is there a second? Is there a second to adopt the agenda? We need to do so to be able to vote on it eventually. Alderman Owens, would you like to second it?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Alderman Gipson, if you'd like to make your motion now, your formal motion to amend.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to move items 13 and 14, the routine sewer easements, to the preliminary agenda, which would be item D and E.
Thank you. Is there a second? There is a motion and a second to amend the agenda. Any discussion? Alderman Sanders.
I had hoped, Mayor, that we would leave those items for discussion. One of those is a Germantown Hotel Group who is going to donate that easement to the city. I want to thank the managing partner, Sonny Desai, for doing that, and the other is going to require a payment. So I hoped we could have a discussion on that.
Thank you, Alderman. Any further discussion?
I agree with
Alderman?
Alderman Sanders. I think that we should have a discussion about why one developer or hotel owner has agreed to donate land to the city while the other developer is asking us to pay them for the easement. And I think that we need to discuss whether or not these issues should have been resolved when the plan was approved in the first place. So I would like to have that discussion.
Thank you, Alderman. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
No.
Alderman Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
The motion is in a tie, and Clerk, I will cast the vote on that with a yes vote. The agenda has been set for this evening, and we
Mayor,
actually have to vote on the agenda here in a second. That
I
was
have
the
a
amendment.
motion, Mayor.
One moment, please. Let me just go ahead and state what we just did. So it was brought forward amended by Alderman Gipson and seconded by Alderman Owens to add item 13 and 14 to the preliminary agenda as item D and E. And so that motion did pass.
Mayor, should we have voted on those two agenda items separately?
You can vote on them individually or together. They were voted on together just a moment ago.
Well, would you mind asking the parliamentarian?
It can be voted on in the way that it was voted on.
What did he
Thank
say about the point of order?
He said that you did not bring forth the point of order. So when you want the floor, that's generally what you do in this situation.
So if it had been brought forward as a point of order, though, would it have then been disallowed?
You're meaning that you didn't ask for the floor a moment ago, but I'll check on that. You could have made a motion to divide the question, but the question has been settled. So for future purposes, you'll know next time.
Thank you.
It has been brought forward and amended, so we do.
I
we
would
do-
like to amend it too, Mayor.
Go ahead. What's your
I'd
amendment?
like to make a motion for us to discuss whether or not the security procedures that we're using today are putting our officers and the public at risk, and if perhaps we should suspend the checkpoint at the front in order to better protect our officers and to better protect the public from the flu and the coronavirus.
Your motion is out of order. If you want to add something to the agenda, as you know from your 3+ years on the board, you do that during the week through the city administrator.
No,
So,
Mayor,
you're-
we add and take things from the agenda
do not bring
regularly.
things forward that without the public's notice. We notice the public, and so that is not correct.
Well,
We
I'd
have a
like to
process
have a
for
vote
this.
on it.
I'm not accepting your motion. We currently have a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda. Please call the roll.
Alderman Gibson,
Hold on, please. You can appeal my decision if you wish.
That's what I'm doing.
Is there a second?
I'll second it so I could hear and better understand what the alderman's asking us to do.
The motion was brought forward to appeal my decision that the motion to add to the agenda was not in order with the rules of this particular body. You have the floor, sir.
Sure.
You have one time at this particular juncture.
Thank you, Mayor. Just before the meeting, the city put out a bulletin announcing how they were planning to put different things in place to help notify the public and protect the public from the coronavirus. So there wasn't prior notice for me to really come up with an agenda item for tonight. My wish to discuss this is in direct response to the mayor's administration putting out the notice to the public of the steps that we're taking about the coronavirus. Chief Hall is being given an opportunity to discuss this, so we could actually incorporate Chief Hall's discussion into the discussion that could be had by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We also didn't know that Chief Hall was going to give the update tonight, yet I think he's being given the opportunity to speak. I welcome that opportunity for him to speak. At the same time, I think the Board of Mayor and Aldermen needs to discuss whether or not we want to suspend the checkpoints that every citizen has to go through before every BMA meeting, because each officer handles the materials that every citizen brings in. That's putting our officers at risk, and that's putting our citizens at risk, and I personally think that the checkpoints are unnecessary.
Alderman, your point of order earlier was to question whether the chair's ruling was appropriate, not to go ahead and make your presentation on what you want added to the agenda. So please just stick to that and be germane.
Well, Mayor, I think I'm done now. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Chief Selberg will be addressing us later on, not Chief Hall. Any other discussion on this particular item?
Well, are we going to bring the motion forward? Because I appealed your decision to not allow
It's on the table.
Is that what we're voting on?
It's on the table.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Alderman Gibson,
No.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
No.
The motion ends in a tie. That is correct. Motion fails. We are on the agenda currently by setting the agenda. It has been properly brought forward and motioned and amended. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
No.
Alderman Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
The motion ends in a tie. I will cast a vote. Yes, the agenda has been set for this evening. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda this evening, approval of the minutes of the regularly held and scheduled meeting of February 24th, 2020, in executive session. There were no additions or modifications at that particular time. Are there any now? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented to the public?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved. We move to item 6 on the agenda, citizens to be heard. Clerk or administrator, do we have any? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to go out to People Street and grab a sheet real quick? We'll hold the floor for you for a moment. Anybody like to come forward and speak this evening? See no one step forward. That concludes the opportunity for citizens to be heard. Item 7 on the agenda, special recognition. This evening, the Germantown Education Commission salutes the Teacher of the Month for March of 2020, Alderman Gipson.
Thank you. If I could ask Mr. Joe Murray to come forward, as well as members of the Education Commission. We're joined by Dr. Patricia Tormina, Barboyer, and Manjeet Kaur. And I would like to say hello to Ms. Liz Diaz, Principal of Houston Middle. Mr. Murray, after being selected as new Teacher of the Year by the Education Commission in 2018, Joe Murray is back with us tonight to accept the March 2020 Teacher of the Month Award. For 3 years now, Mr. Murray's positive attitude has contributed to the positive atmosphere at Houston Middle School, where he teaches 7th grade social studies and current events. If you were to walk into his classroom, you would find students entrenched in meaningful conversations connecting the stories of the past with the implications to our lives today. You would see a teacher who worked hard to develop an engaging and relevant lesson, who delivers it with passion and animation that keeps his students' attention. It is not unusual to hear students talking about the fun things that happened in Mr. Murray's class. Outside of his regular classroom duties, Mr. Murray tutors students who need extra help and frequently opens up his classroom during lunch for students who want to visit. He is intentional about building relationships with students and advocating for their needs. Mr. Murray also started and sponsors the Debate Club. The club has helped students who may struggle with self-confidence to find their voice. It is impressive to see them gather the courage to get up in front of a large crowd and defend their position. These students are courageous and articulate, thanks to the guidance and encouragement of Mr. Murray. Mr. Murray is active in the community and is currently taking classes to become a certified foster parent with the goal of adoption. Mr. Murray, please accept our appreciation for your commitment to Germantown students and to excellence every day.
Mr. Murray, on behalf of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the city, we congratulate you. Betsy Landers, the former school board chair and current school board member, is here this evening. I'm sure she's very proud of you as well as your colleagues. I'm a former 8th grade civics teacher in another lifetime in the 80s, so I know about the lesson planning that you've done in the past. So congratulations once again, and thank you so much. And right on cue, if you'd like to stay for the entire meeting, you may. If you'd like to beat the weather, have some dinner, and get your lessons plan done and all that, you may be excused. We always like it when people stay, but if you'd like to leave, you may. All right. Well, thank you, and congratulations again. That takes us to item number 8 on the agenda this evening. Alderman Liaison reports. We move from position 1 through position 5. Alderman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. The Beautification Commission held a successful Arbor Day event last Friday. We're happy to report that we gave away the majority of our trees and sold the majority of the fruit trees and shrubs we had. Those that were left, as far as the fruit trees and berry bushes, started to be planted today along the Greenway by our Natural Resources Division, and we've enlisted the help of some scouts to help the city plant the remaining free trees that we have on hand. Also, would like to report that Thursday at 4 p.m. the Beautification Commission has a holiday lighting subcommittee that will meet to discuss potential for purchase of new improved holiday lighting for some of our telephone poles around the city, and to look at some options that we might explore for future decorations for the city. That completes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Gipson.
Thank you, Mayor. The new conference room at the library is complete and is now currently in use. Thanks to many of our wonderful partners within the city, the Friends of the Library, as well as the Kiwanis Club. They hosted the first World Peace Day there at the library this past week, where they showcased a collection of materials that foster peace not only in the world but within our community. Neighborhood Preservation met last week, where they'll be reviewing the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance in the upcoming months. Board of Zoning Appeals will meet here in City Hall tomorrow night, and we'll hear a use on appeal request from Shelby County Schools for an addition at Germantown Elementary School. Parks and Recreation Commission met on February 27th to review the Germantown Station and Riverdale Parks improvement plans and to receive updates on CIP projects underway and the land exchange with GMSD. The Riverdale Park plans are being reviewed by staff, and discussions are ongoing with Neighborhood Association leadership regarding the softball field. The Commission's next meeting will be held on Thursday, March 26th at 5:30 p.m. at the Parks and Recreation's office. For public art, at the Germantown Half Marathon and Mayor's Cup 5K, the Public Art Commission launched Colors of the Heart, a community art project which will help define our city's unique identity. The Colors of the Heart cart will be traveling around the city over the next couple of months. It's free to participate in the art project, and survey is open to each member of every family. When you participate in this project, you're helping to shape the future of arts in Germantown and yield a community-created piece of public art that will be unveiled and celebrated at another free community event at the GPAC Grove on May 9th. that will reflect your values and what makes Germantown a great place in which to live and work. The cart will be at the Germantown Athletic Center on March 14th and 15th, the library on the 16th and 17th, along with events at the Easter egg hunt at Cameron Brown, Farmington Elementary School Family Carnival, and many more things. You can find it on the Arts Launch website. If you're a resident of Germantown and want your voice to be heard, please head over to, you can go through the city, but it is thepubliccartin.com/Tennessee/Germantown to learn more about Arts Launch and to give feedback. And I would like to report that the Houston Mustangs baseball team had their season opener today, despite the rain, against Mumford, and I had to leave a little bit before they were quite finished, and hopefully they were able to get in a full game. Go Mustangs.
Thank you, Alderman Gibson. Appreciate that report. Alderman Massey.
No report this week, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the Planning Commission met on March 3rd and looked to reviewed and approved the hotel site plan for Thornwood and a revised parking plan for the Village of Germantown. That's my report.
Thank you, Alderman. And just a few items from the mayor's office. I'd like to give special recognition and thanks to Jennifer Jenkins with Risk and Safety and receiving the Public Entity Partners Excellence in Risk Management Scholarship. So I'm sure she's going to go and get some more good learning, and it was probably free for the city, so tell her attaboy. Also, I'd like to recognize the Kiwanis Club for recognizing our public safety employees. Driver Wayne Hampton was this year's Firefighter of the Year, and this year's Lawman of the Year was Lieutenant Brian Wallace. Also, shout out to Reggie, Chad, Steve, and Derek for all passing their operator engineer exams. I know Reynolds not here, but Bo, you know those guys, if you could pass on our recognition. And a little bit from economic development, as it's been reported and known, the city set a sales tax collection record for the month of February, which reflects the holiday shopping season of December. Close to $1.6 million, roughly $250,000 more than the previous record. So keep shopping, dining, and playing local. We thank the residents and our visitors. And then finally, I've been a little bit remiss in not reporting housing sales recently, but the city still remains very strong. We're up 15.6% over this time last year in total sales price, and that is pretty high at $402,000 and well above our nearest competitor in Collierville. So keep up the good work in the economy as well. At this time, I'd like to ask Chief Selberg to come forward. Last Friday, the Shelby County Mayor hosted and called a meeting of all the municipal mayors from Memphis to all of the suburbs and many of the elected officials at the county and at the city council level for a health department briefing. There has since been one today via conference call, and the health department is leading most of this region's activity as far as the coronavirus, and the city has been fully cooperative. Chief, you have the floor for a few minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Alderman. With the spread of coronavirus getting closer to home, we wanted to give you a brief update on efforts and preparations that the city is taking to be prepared. You've already heard that someone in Shelby County has tested positive for the coronavirus, or COVID-19. Due to the anticipated spread and the fact that Germantown has a lot of residents that travel, we anticipate that this could affect Germantown. We have been in close contact with the Shelby County Health Department, the State Department of Health, and EMS, and other municipalities and agencies. In situations like this, the Shelby County Health Department serves as the lead agency and provides the overall guidance, as well as information for the public, including information that comes through the Tennessee Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control. Additionally, on the fire department, we coordinate closely with our medical director, Dr. Joe Hawley, for guidance on preparing and responding to potential coronavirus medical calls. Dr. Hawley also serves as the medical director for many other EMS agencies in our area, as well as the state medical director. We're closely working with state EMS, the other agencies, as well as the hospitals to coordinate our actions. The city has an emergency management plan to provide information on handling emergencies. Additionally, we have a continuity of operations plan that provides guidance to assure that we're able to continue to provide basic services to our residents. Interestingly, we have a flu pandemic plan that was developed in 2009 that also is serving as good guidance for this situation. The continuity of operations plan helps us identify those problems and challenges that the city may experience, key work processes within each department that need to be maintained, changes that may need to be made to their operations, how to handle different levels of staffing, such as a situation in which a significant number of employees got sick or are unable to work, such as due to a quarantine. For example, the fire department can go to 2 shifts to operate. The possibility of some employees telecommunicating or working from home. Obviously, for a government organization that provides services to our residents, this would be very limited. Following the CDC guidelines, we are providing information to our employees on how to limit or prevent the impact of the virus, such as the good hygiene. The best way to prevent the spread of the virus is through good hygiene, such as regular hand washing and the use of hand sanitizers when hand washing is not available. Also, conducting extra cleaning of work areas, restrooms, and other common areas throughout the buildings. Limiting contact with others. This can include limiting shaking hands, or at least cleaning your hands after you shake hands, and keeping 3 to 6 feet distance from others as much as reasonable. Obviously, for many positions, this wouldn't be possible. Covering your cough, such as with a tissue or your arm. These precautions are basically the same as for the flu. We're asking people to be more diligent to help prevent the virus spread. We will also help assure that information from the health department is passed along to our residents. We will work closely with the health department to provide information. Some other preparations we're taking at the city include reevaluating any upcoming events in which many people might be closely gathered. With guidance from the health department, we want to be prepared to modify or cancel events and meetings if needed for the safety of our residents. Stressing that employees should not report to work if possibly sick, such as if they have a cough or fever. The health department recommends that a person be fever-free for at least 24 hours before returning to work. We are also trying to limit any unnecessary travel, such as to large events. Also, obviously, firefighters and police officers must come into close proximity daily with people in their jobs. Both organizations are staying abreast with the latest guidelines in their industry to help limit their exposure. From the ambulance standpoint, we are concerned that this could result in the hospital emergency departments getting more overwhelmed. This could result in longer wait times at the hospital as we wait to transfer a patient to the emergency department staff. Longer wait times result in less availability of the ambulances and can result in ambulance shortages. We continue to coordinate with the hospitals on their planning and discuss options to address the problem should it get worse. We also want to assure that our personnel have the latest information, including handling potential coronavirus patients. This would include the proper personal protective equipment, or what we call PPE, such as gloves, masks, eye shields, and Tyvek suits if needed. We carry the N95 face masks that are designed for this purpose. Fortunately, most of the standard precautions that we take for possible flu or other communicable diseases are the same for coronavirus. Similar to the flu, they believe coronavirus is spread through respiratory droplets produced when a person coughs or sneezes, and then these droplets are inhaled or exposed to your mouth, eyes, or nose. This can be done directly or indirectly, such as it landing on something and getting on a person's hand and then them touching their face. A notable symptom difference between the flu and coronavirus is the respiratory difficulty that comes with the coronavirus. Older people and those with weakened immune systems are most susceptible to the coronavirus and the flu. Obviously, we have a large senior population, so we want to make sure that they are taking the necessary precautions and receiving proper care. We continue to coordinate with the health department and our other partners to develop contingencies as the situation evolves. We are taking effort to be as prepared as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the report and the work that you're doing with staff and your team, and please keep us abreast if anything changes. Thank you. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9 on the agenda this evening, the preliminary agenda. As mentioned earlier, the preliminary agenda was presented in executive session. During the setting and adopting of the agenda this evening, 2 items were added. I'll read those items now into the record. Item 9A, contract rooftop unit replacement, Fire Station Number 2. 9B, donations, Quest for Excellence Conference. Item 9C, purchase network switch replacement. Item 9D, sewer easement, Germantown Hotel Group LLC, Trevure Phase 2. Item 9E, sewer easement, Gill Poplar, GP, Trevure Phase 3. Is there a motion to adopt the preliminary agenda as modified?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Point of inquiry.
Yes.
I believe you asked if there was a motion to approve to adopt the agenda. It's actually, are we not approving these items, not just to approve the amended agenda?
I'm sorry, poor choice of words. We are approving the motion that's been brought forward. Thank you for the clarification. Continue with the roll call.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Alderman Gibson.
Yes.
Are you concluded with the roll call? Okay, what was the vote?
Alderman Sanders, yes. Alderman Gibson, yes. Alderman Massey, no. Alderman Owens, yes.
Thank you. The preliminary agenda passes. We move to the regular agenda. Item 10 on the regular agenda, ordinance 2020-5, rezoning of 9695 Poplar Avenue from O office to RE residential estate, second reading and public hearing. Director Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The item in front of you is a rezoning and public hearing to rezone from office to residential estate on the east side of town, just south of Poplar Avenue and just west of the Germantown city limits. This is a 7.46 acre piece of property. The existing single-family house was built in 1953 under agriculture zoning in Shelby County. This property was annexed into the city in 2000, and the zoning designation of office was placed on this, as well as the other single-family properties that can be seen in this map. They have, however, remained single-family residential and not developed since being annexed into the city. The Planning Commission did approve this rezoning on January 7th, 2020. The applicant is requesting this rezoning to move forward with expanding the single-family house. At its current form, it is considered a legal non-conforming use in the office district. Any expansion of the house or tearing it down and building beyond the current outline of the home site is prohibited due to the office zoning. The property is bordered to the north by railroad tracks and to the west and south by MLG property line utility easements, and to the east by single-family residents also zoned office. The applicant does wish to improve this property as a single-family house and either add an addition or demolish the existing house and construct a new one. As previously stated, in order to do this, the property must have a zoning designation that allows the use. The zoning designation of residential estate allows the applicant to improve the property as a single-family residential with the related allowable accessory uses within the district. This does meet the Forward 2030 land use and transportation of the city experiencing positive trends and assessed value of residential areas. Happy to answer any questions on this rezoning.
Thank you, Director, for your presentation this evening. Is there a motion to approve on second reading ordinance 2020-05, the rezoning of 9695 Poplar Avenue from O office to RE residential estate? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a motion by Alderman Owens and a second by Alderman Sanders. At this time, I will declare a public hearing now open. Anyone who would like to come forward and speak to this particular item on the agenda, please do so now. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak on rezoning of 9695 Poplar Avenue from O office to RE residential estate? Is there anyone who would like to come forward? Are you coming forward to speak on this particular item? Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this particular item? Seeing no one else come forward, that concludes the public hearing portion of this particular item, and we move to discussion. The floor is open. Alderman Massey.
Mayor, what would be the next steps for upzoning this property to allow for other uses beyond just residential estate lots? Specifically taking it from office to some greater density.
The director, if you'd like to just go over a process, I guess. That's not the question this evening, correct? Go ahead.
Mayor, could I ask for a little bit of more clarification from the alderman as to the...
Sure. If you want to restate your question, please.
So if someone wanted to go from office to, say, zero lot line, so what would the steps be in order to accomplish that result?
Go ahead, Director.
So as with every rezoning in the city, it would start with an application to Economic and Community Development, which would be reviewed through our internal processes as well as the subcommittee for Planning Commission, and then considered by Planning Commission, and if voted on affirmatively at Planning Commission, it would move forward to this body, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, for a 3-reading process with a public hearing.
Thank you, Director. You have the floor, Alderman.
But the zoning itself, can you go from, say, an office zoning to something that would allow for single-family lots, or would you have to go? Would it be wiser to take a step down from office to residential estate lots?
Currently what's on the agenda this evening is the question at hand is to look at moving from office to, and that's the applicant's desire, to move to a residential estate. So there's not anything in front of you. Hypothetical questions, if you'd like to ask staff at another time.
This is my time, Mayor. I want to have it answered on the record.
You have to state germane to the topic.
This is germane to the topic. I want it answered on the record. There's no reason not to answer the question. You've wasted more time arguing with me than it would have taken Mr. Ross to answer the question.
I will give you one opportunity to remain germane, and then I will end your time on the floor. Your question is, if you'd like to restate it to me, it'd be fine.
Mr. Ross understood the question. Now he can answer.
If you'd like to restate it to me, it'd be fine. I want to hear it as well.
What would be the steps for rezoning this piece of property to allow for more lots or smaller lots than would be allowed under the residential estate zoning that has been requested here tonight?
Mr. Ross, if you'd like to, I think you answered that a moment ago. If you'd like to just reinforce your answer.
Mayor, it would follow the same steps as previously outlined.
Thank you, Director. You have the floor.
He's not answering the question, though. Can you go from residential estate lots to, say, a zero lot line, or would you need to take the progression of going to the residential estate lots first from office?
There is not a pattern on zoning. If you'd like to try to answer that, would be fine.
Mayor, I believe I am starting to understand the alderman's question, and that the applicant, any property owner can choose the zoning that they would like to try for a particular property. And this applicant, based on his intention to redevelop the property for his single family residence, emphasis on the single family residence, and also improve upon that and have accessory uses such as a barn, a potential pool house or guest house, Those are items that are only allowed under the residential estate zoning. Planned development process is not allowed under the residential estate zoning process. So he would have had to choose the R zoning or something of higher density if he intended to break this up into different lots.
Thank you,
Once-
Director. You have the floor, sir.
Citizens have called me and just asked me this question, Mr. Ross. That's why you're getting it tonight. The question is, is this developer who's purchased the property going to purchase it and have it rezoned under a residential estate with the ultimate goal of being to have it zoned again at a later date if they sell it to someone else for, say, a planned development that then attaches to Viridian?
And your time's concluded. You'll have another opportunity to speak. I believe the applicant has stated to staff and also publicly at the Planning Commission level that this is going to be their primary residence to live on. The floor is open for further discussion. Anybody? Would you like another round, Alderman Massey?
Sure, Mr. Ross can answer the question I just asked him.
Sure. Mr. Smith, do you want to come forward? You represent the applicant.
Mr.
As-
Smith
as
can
his
answer. I want
represent-
Mr. Ross to answer first, if you don't mind, Mayor. He's the city official.
If you'd like to go ahead and answer what the application is for, as you have stated.
No, I didn't ask him what the application was for. That's what you're wanting him to answer.
That's exactly what you asked for. I
did not ask what the application
You
was
asked
for.
for what the owner plans to do. That's what the applicant has made a request for. Mr. Ross?
As it says about midway through the discussion section of the agenda sheet, the applicant wishes to improve the property as a single-family house.
Point of
either
order.
What is your point of order, sir?
You're really having staff answer your question, not my question, and just eating into my time, and that's
He's answering your question.
that was not my question. You
wanna
created your own question.
You want to restate your question?
You can use your own time.
Do you want to restate your question, Alderman?
I want the clock stopped, and I want my time
do you
put on
want
because you're
do you-
wasting my time.
do you want
and
to
you're wasting the
restate your-
public's time
do you-
with this sort of evasion.
Do you want to restate your question, Alderman? Yes or no? Further discussion?
Yeah, I'm still discussing. I want Mr. Ross to answer the question I asked.
Go ahead and state the question again. It's not
Perhaps
that hard.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn briefly, take a break, so that Miss Betty can replay the record so she can come up with exactly what I asked and asked him. Since you're going to continue to play these games, we'll just get it right on the record.
Only thing you have to do is restate your question. It'll be fine.
The question's already been asked. You just refuse to allow your staff to answer it.
The staff will answer the question. What is your question?
Mayor, everybody knows what the question was. You're wasting our time. Why are you wasting our time? Why are you playing these games? Why are you playing these games, Mayor?
Apparently the question
you look
is
like
not
a
clear.
clown. Do you understand
Well,
what I'm saying?
the
You
only-
look like
only
a
thing
clown.
you- only thing you
Your
have to
city
do is
administrator's
restate-
over there throwing down his glasses.
Hey, excuse me, folks. Your time is now concluded from the discussion. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this? Any further discussion? Go ahead. Alderman Gipson.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Gipson.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
if we could, as far as directing staff, the question that I believe my colleague is attempting to ask is a hypothetical of what could be. My understanding from the presentation from Mr. Ross and from reading the application is that this is brought to us, RE Estate, rezoning,
Go ahead.
excuse me, an RE zoning for
ahead.
the, I apologize, for the use of this gentleman's personal home.
What is your point of order?
The city administrator seems to be giving me eye signals
That's-
over there. If he
that's
has
not a-
something he's wanting to interject
That's not
into
a
the
point of order.
conversation.
You're out of order.
let's
That's not
go
a
ahead
point
and
of
just
order.
say it.
You have the floor, Alderman Gipson.
Thank you, sir. And gentlemen, I apologize. This is seems to be the new normal that we have here, and so I'll ask again, and Mayor, if it's all right to ask the
Sure.
applicant
Yeah.
specifically, The application says that this is for this gentleman's personal residence, correct?
There is no intent to do anything other than to bring the current use into conformance so that he can occupy the home, expand the home, and use the accessory structures that are on the property, period.
Thank you, sir.
No other intent.
Thank you. You still have the floor?
I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please call the roll. Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Alderman Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Abstain.
The measure carries and moves to third and final reading, and the public will be notified when that date is set. That moves us to item 11 on the agenda this evening, Resolution 20R03, Thornwood Mixed-Use Plan Development, Amended Outline Plan, and Public Hearing. Director Ross.
Thank you again, Mayor, members of the board. The purpose of this agenda item is to approve the amended outline plan for the Thornwood mixed-use plan development as recommended by the Planning Commission. This item in front of you modifies the uses allowed as part of the approved outline plan. The outline plan was originally approved by the Planning Commission in April of 2014 and by this board on May 12th, 2014. There have been 5 phases up to this point recorded and constructed with this project, and this is part of the one undeveloped parcel, just under 3 acres that's remaining within the planned development. The modifications would be to add a hotel use to the site, which would be at approximately, with the second hotel, an addition of 114 rooms, so that would bring the total room count to the site to 222 rooms. Still left available as part of the outline plan would be office and retail uses, as well as some residential left on the site. All of these uses are allowed within the T5 zoning district, which this remaining section is in. The final plan for this development must be submitted to the Planning Commission for approval, and that was done the previous Tuesday on March the 3rd. And that included specific details on their architectural materials and site standards as required by the Smart Code zoning district. This does meet the Forward 2030 plan of key performance area within economic development, of those policies that encourage investment in our key commercial areas by facilitating opportunities for these vital areas to flourish. Staff is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Ross, for the presentation. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 20R03 for the Thornwood Mixed-Use Plan Development Amended Outline Plan? Is there a motion?
Make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. At this time, I will declare a public hearing open on this particular item on Resolution 20R03, Thornwood Mixed-Use Plan Development Amendment Outline Plan. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak on this particular matter before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen? Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak to the board on this particular application? Third and last call. Seeing no one step forward, that concludes the public hearing portion of this agenda item. We return to the motion that's on the floor. I will remind the board to please remain germane to the discussion on the particular question at hand. The floor is open. Alderman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. If this is approved tonight, the developer will still have to have their plans reviewed, and it'll still come back to this body for the development agreement. Am I correct on that?
Thank you, Alderman. Director Ross, is that correct?
Mayor, the Alderman is correct.
Thank you. You have the floor.
And from reading the attached documents and what have you, I would like to ask, were during the other phases, the subcommittee and then the full committee and the commissions, were there any citizens that came to speak either way for or against this change.
Thank you. I was a member of that as well. I do not recall, but was there anyone that came forward to speak? Director?
No, Mayor, there was no one that came forward to speak.
Thank you. Alderman?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, you still have the floor.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Although I'm not a proponent of smart growth, as the residents probably know, I do support this change in the in this outline plan, and I'd like to just explain why. First, to me, the previous 570 apartment units had been approved by the board prior to my being seated back in 2014. So this amendment decreases the number of apartments that will be allowed in this project by 114. I do realize that it also increases and adds the hotel and adds the 114 rooms, but it appears to me that that has some benefit to this community. Number one is our hotel motel tax supports GPAC by ordinance 60%, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which leads me to believe, and I am hopeful, that by an increased revenue in the hotel motel tax, the burden upon our taxpayer and the general fund will decrease as we continue to support GPAC. I do know that the Grove was a huge drain on the taxpayer. I don't foresee another project like that being attached to GPAC, and I don't believe that I would support it if it were. Also, by having 114 less residents living full-time at this location, I just believe that if the hotel were not totally booked, we would have less traffic in that neighborhood, which sometimes our residents complain about and do not like to see the increased traffic. So I believe that is a positive also in my mind. I haven't had anyone contact me opposed to this. I didn't have anyone actually contact me saying they supported it. I did run into a resident from Neshoba North that's part of their board, the HOA, and was told that they don't oppose this amendment, but have not actually, I guess, come out and publicly supported it either. So I just wanted to let the residents know that I plan to support this amendment and my reasoning for doing so.
Thank you, Alderman. Further discussion? Alderman Massey?
So I think I'm the only alderman that will vote tonight that actually lives in the 38138 zip code. In other words, just down the road from Thornwood. I don't begrudge the developer. He's here tonight. The development itself looks nice, but just from the viewpoint of myself and my neighbors, we felt like it was too much density. We felt like the city administration misled us from the beginning. That's not your fault. But at the same time, we were lied to. We weren't lied to necessarily by you, but the people we elected to represent us
order.
lied to us.
What is your point of order,
Not
please?
germane to the topic.
Repeat, please.
It's not, the comments are not germane to
Thank
what we're
you.
voting on.
Yeah, and I uphold that. Alderman, please, we know that you're not in favor of smart growth. I think that has been something you have stated many, many times.
Mayor, I'm explaining my vote tonight, and this is
well,
absolutely germane.
You have to stay within the framework of the topic, and
listen, just
whether
because you don't want it heard doesn't make it not germane.
you have the floor. Please remain germane. I will give you your one warning, your second warning, and I will cease your time on the floor. Continue, please.
I'd like to check with the parliamentarian and just see if he thinks that any of this happens to be germane. Are you just going to be able to declare any word that I say not germane so that I can?
Your colleague is the one that brought that forward, and again, I concur with that.
She's a puppet for you, Mayor. We know that.
Alderman, just stay to the topic at hand, the application in front of you. Your job is to try to go ahead and try to convince your colleagues to vote with you, not to spew all kinds of misinformation and things that are false and not true. So
Nothing I said is false.
I'm going to give you the floor, and if you cannot remain germane to the topic, I will cease your time on the floor. You have the floor, sir.
First of all, my job is to uphold and defend the Constitution, the city charter, and the Constitution of the state of Tennessee. My second responsibility is to carry out those responsibilities that are outlined in the charter. If my colleagues are upholding their oaths of office, it wouldn't be that hard to convince them to do the right thing. But that's not what occurs up here. They bend over backwards to do everything they can for
Point of order, Mayor.
developers.
What is your point of order,
Enough of the
please?
personal attacks. This is not germane to the topic at hand.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Your time is now
No,
concluded
Mayor,
from the floor.
no, listen, you brought it.
The floor is currently open. Floor is currently open. Is there anyone else who would like to have the floor at this time? Alderman Owens, go ahead. You have the floor, sir. I'm not recognizing you. I've recognized Alderman Owens. You have the floor. Go ahead and speak. Go ahead, Alderman Owens.
I would like, if I could, ask Mr. Ray.
Sure, he has the floor currently. You have the floor, Alderman Owens. Alderman Owens has the floor.
Mayor, I would like to
I've ruled. Go ahead.
ask Mr. Ray if he would, if you don't mind, could you speak just a little bit to the success of the previous hotel?
Mr. Ray, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the record. I apologize. Go ahead and continue. I was just
Essentially,
trying to get him to
you
come
stated
forward.
in the Planning Commission, and I think it was very helpful to the Planning Commission members in discussing this development and the prior hotel and the success that they have experienced there.
My name is Spencer Ray, McNeil Commercial Real Estate, 1468 Kimbrough, Suite 103, Germantown 38138. I stated to the Planning Commission that one of the primary reasons that we adjusted our outline use plan approvals from 570 units of multifamily and reduced that by 114 units to transfer those over to a motel use was the principles of SMART code that really develop business based on mass and based on urban planning principles, where residents have the ability, as well as customers, to walk and engage in a development. And one of the dynamics of Thornwood is we have 17 acres, and because of the multiple uses where you have hotel users at night with restaurants and then on-site residents, between those three uses, you are, Alderman Sanders, one of the points you made about traffic is that the customers that are coming to the hotels are not, they're not having to get in their cars and make traffic trips as they define them in these vehicular reports, the traffic studies, because they can walk across the street to the restaurants. Same with the residents, and I appreciate the fact that you found good in the hotel, but when it works together, and you do have to create mass, you can't have a 10-unit apartment building and one restaurant and one small retail store, but once you get mass, they really do work together, and one of the points that I made to Planning Commission is that Hampton Inn and Suites, even though it's surrounded in this, if you took a 5-mile radius by other Hilton and Marriott properties, that property, the average daily rate, or really the RevPAR rate, which takes a blend of occupancy and the average daily rate, is about 40% higher than the other hotels in Germantown, and really not just outside Germantown, all the way back to Poplar and I-240. We believe that that is just about 95% of it is related to the fact that this hotel, although it's a great hotel, provides people with the ability to come, park their car, walk across the street and eat dinner, enjoy the community. Obviously, GPAC and the new outdoor venue is going to be across the street. And so when you think about a property that's by the like companies, and there's other Hampton Inns, there's one at Wolf Chase, there's one at Winchester, and there's one at Poplar and Estate, as well as Poplar and 240, you pick up not only a less vehicular traffic, but you increase your sales tax, you increase your property tax, and it's really, it's almost like a living organism. As it comes together, it's very healthy. It's economically healthy. It is from a pedestrian urban environment. It's very healthy, and I'm hoping that as the community is able to visit there, eat there, whether or not they're obviously someone who's living in Germantown is not going to stay in the hotel, but we hope that they're going to have the ability to walk or ride their bikes there, and they're going to see that it's really a great place as a part of your community.
You have the floor, Alderman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ray. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you. Further discussion on this particular item? Any further discussion? Alderman Massey.
So I understand that residents or the customers of the hotel won't be staying there, but they also won't have the same affinity for our neighborhoods and our children. I'm probably the youngest, I know I'm the youngest person on this board, so I'm also the parent that has the youngest child. And so for me, I want to know my neighbors. The apartments themselves create a transient community because people generally don't stay there long term. Well, with a hotel, you get even more of that. In my opinion, that's not what Germantown was designed to be. And in reality, the original Smart Growth Plan never contemplated this sort of building. You had a few apartments, but that was expanded into hundreds of new apartments, including your standalone apartment complex. And again, I don't hold you at fault for that. It's your responsibility to get the most profit that you can get from a piece of property. I understand it very well. However, it was the responsibility of this board to follow the design guidelines that were incorporated into that original 2007 Smart Growth Plan that was sold to the public. It was in 2013 that that plan was changed. It was at that time that you were allowed to incorporate hundreds of new apartments. And
Mayor,
now you're
point
going
of
to
order, Mayor.
incorporate...
What is your point of order?
We
I
are
recognize
talking about the outline plan, the amendment to the outline plan, which includes a hotel and retail.
Thank you. I concur. Please stay focused and germane to the particular hotel that's part of the outline plan. You have the floor, sir.
Mayor, Alderman Owens, with all due respect, didn't object when
You have the floor.
the
Continue.
developer was explaining hotels in the past, and now I'm explaining the history of the zoning and what it should be, and you're objecting.
It was germane to the topic.
Yeah,
This
please,
is germane to the
please, We're
topic.
not debating among each other. Go ahead, continue. You have the floor. That's your first warning on being germane. Go ahead.
So my neighbors have come to me and expressed concern about the amount of the density that's going to be incorporated. They've expressed concerns about the transient nature of the community that you're creating. That was a residentially zoned property at one
Point of
time.
order.
What is your point of order, please?
Mayor, we're not debating whether or not there's density at this location. We are discussing the outline amendment.
Thank you. I concur. Please.
Point of order,
stay-
Mayor.
Stay germane.
There should be some disciplinary action for these dilatory motions that are designed to eat up my time and detract from the debate itself and the discussion. This shouldn't be allowed to continue.
You're currently eating up your own time, sir. Go ahead. You have the floor.
So my neighbors have come to me and expressed concerns about the number of new apartments that are going to be built and the number of hotel rooms that are being built.
Alderman Massey,
I'll let you, Mayor can let you talk. Sure. I'm sorry, I have a limited amount of time, and so I'm not trying to cut you off and be rude. I just really have a limited amount of time. And so from someone who actually lives near these neighbors, perhaps the reason that, the reason that they've expressed that they don't go to other aldermen is because they don't believe they'll do anything. They think that they're going to side with the developers every single time.
What is your point of order? You are recognized.
This is not germane. This is not an appropriate debate for this conversation.
Alderman Gipson, I do agree with you. That is your final warning. You're Your time is now concluded. Is there anyone else who would like the floor at this time? Is there anyone else who would like the floor? Alderman
thank you.
Gibson.
I don't even know how to start this.
What is, you are recognized. What is your point of order? Alderman, Alderman Gibson's only been able to express less than half of a sentence. Go ahead.
So I would simply just, I'm going to say a couple of comments, maybe ask a question or two. It is our job as aldermen to make certain that if we have an item before us, that we...
What is your point of order, sir? You're recognized. She's about to deliver that.
Considering all the objections to any statement I made tonight.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Continue. Stay on point.
In meeting with Mr. Ross this past week to have this discussion about this particular item, it is my job, if I'm going to be speaking to this body, that I do so in a way that I articulate during the time that I am given, ask the questions that I need to ask without throwing stones,
Alderman Massey, you are out of order. You have not asked for a point of order. You need to be quiet.
And so
Go ahead,
I would ask the citizens of Germantown, I would ask, I don't even know what to ask. It's not my apology to make. We are here to do the business at hand. Mr. Ray came before the Planning Commission and discussed why this was, in your opinion, a better plan, moving less apartments in, more hotel rooms. The Hampton is as successful as you would have hoped to be. I think those were your words. It was more so. And so, again, I'm at a loss for words for how we get to screaming matches between people who purport to want to work hard for this city.
Alderman, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any further discussion? Alderman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Ray, for your comments. I don't think we've met before, but still, you won't convince me to like smart growth. But again, to the residents, this original plan was approved in 2014. And I'm afraid if I vote no, that we're going to end up with the original plan of 570 apartments. With this change, it goes down to 456.
You're recognized. What is your point?
Alderman Sanders is referring to a plan. There have been several plans for this particular development. Specifically, which plans? The one that was...
He is, I believe your point is well made in the sense that Alderman Sanders is looking at the report that he has in his hands. Go ahead and continue. You have the floor.
I'll be happy to clarify. It's the, on our agenda sheet, the previously approved outline plan indicates the 570 units were approved. The office retail stays the same. Our hotel rooms go up with this amendment. The open space and civic space stays the same. I wish it would be more. It's my understanding there's going to be one more phase of this development. I'm hopeful that 456 units maximum for this development could or would go down even further. But that's yet to be seen. But I just wanted to clarify once again why I thought if I voted no, that it was worse, detrimental to the community to have the additional apartments that have already been approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman.
I would like just to make one
Go ahead.
statement about the project, because every real estate development is unique.
What is your point of order?
So you're giving the developer more time to speak to
Go ahead, Mr. Ray. You're overruled. I'd like to listen to Mr. Ray. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
One of the statements made was about multifamily being transient and oriented, and I would say that.
What is your point of order?
Alderman Gibson specifically objected to me entering the comments about that into the record, and now you're allowing the developer.
I'm allowing Mr. Ray to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Ray, if you'd make your comments.
The reporter's going to report on this?
Please be quiet, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Ray, if you'd like to continue and conclude with your comments.
Informationally is that at least 50% of the renewal agreements in the project opened a year ago this week, but approximately 50% of the renewals in the project are for 2 years, which in the multifamily development world is very, very unusual. Usually a year renewal is a long time, and 6 months is standard in many markets. That leads us to believe that not only are the residents there very happy, most of them, if not a majority of them, came from Germantown or this area, and they plan to stay there. They're making it their home. And so we're very excited about that, and it's a good indicator that people are not using it as a short-term residence.
Thank you for that additional insight as well. Is there further discussion? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, I'll be brief, Mayor, and I'll try and be germane to the topic. I understand some of the surrounding residents' concerns about Thornwood and about mixed use and about higher density. I do. I guess what I would hope with not only this plan, but with the overall development of Thornwood, but especially with this outline plan amendment, is that we might, and I'm not trying to convince anyone of something they don't believe in, but that we might consider this, what this development is, that it's contributing not only to the city coffers, as Alderman Sanders talked about, the GPAC and the sales tax revenue from the hotels, but also, in my belief, to the quality of life of our residents. I mean, this development and this outline plan amendment, it's been a successful development. It is creating walkable spaces, vibrant spaces. It's got a great mix of retail and dining choices for our residents. And in addition, it happens to benefit, our tax base. And so I know that there was initial concerns about this. I would like if we could all keep an open mind and if not embrace, at least understand what is being done here. And I think it's a success story. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Massey?
The vote was registered as no.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Thank you. The measure carries and is approved. We move now to item 12 on the agenda, purchase Miller Farms ditch repairs. Director Mills.
Thank you, Chair. Board, the purpose of this agenda item is to request authorization for engineering design by A2H Incorporated and construction services by Nabholz Construction Services to repair failed sections of the Miller Farm concrete line ditch. After a heavy rainstorm that occurred on January the 17th of this year, staff was alerted by one of our residents that a section of the ditch wall behind his home had failed and actually fallen into the flow line of Miller Farm's drainage ditch. After we investigated, there were actually 3 failures discovered. One is a failure of a vertical wall, which is about 20 feet long by 9 feet tall. The other 2 repairs are in a V-channel shaped ditch upstream, with each failure being about 10 feet by 12 feet in the area. So to prevent additional failures to the ditch due to these exposures of the dirt, it was decided to use job order contracting as a way to respond quickly. A2H was contacted to provide a design for the repairs, and their cost was $1,800. The job order contracting cost through Nabholz for the construction services themselves is $245,140.73. One of our great residents gave us access to the area via a temporary easement at 1575 Old Mill. So the total for our project is $246,940.73. As mentioned earlier, this is an unbudgeted project, and we're asking to fund this out of the CIP contingency. Our Germantown Forward 2030 states in the City Services and Finance section that stewardship of our city assets is essential to deliver high-quality services consistently and effectively to our customers. Mr. Chair, I can respond to questions.
Director Mills, thank you for that presentation and that report. We do appreciate that. Is there a motion to authorize the design, engineering, and consultation services provided by A2H Incorporated for repairs to the Miller Farms ditch at 3 different locations by Nabholz Construction Services, LLC, in the total amount of $246,940.73, and the approval of budget adjustment number 20-58. Is there? Go ahead.
Move to approve. Sorry, sir.
That's all right. There's a motion by Alderman Gipson, a second by Alderman Sanders. Clerk, let the record reflect that Alderman Position 3 has left the meeting, please. The floor is open for discussion. Alderman Owens, Alderman Sanders.
I just want to publicly thank Mr. Terry Federline, I guess that's how you pronounce it, for allowing us this easement to get this work done. Unfortunately, I think when we laid out some laterals years past, we didn't have access to make repairs to a lot of these, just like when we had the work done on Dogwood, we had to make our own access. So I'm very thankful that he willingly allows us that easement, and promise that we'll make things right once we're through traversing his property. And thank staff for working hard to get this done. I know some people, residents in that neighborhood, thinks it took us a little longer than it should have, but I just tried to express to them, if they reviewed these documents in the agenda packet, that the Nabholz bid was done early last month, and we've been moving forward on it, and thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
The measure carries and approved. Bo, go fix
Thank
the
you.
ditch.
Yes, sir.
Item 13 and 14 were moved to the consent agenda earlier this evening, and so we've reached the conclusion of our meeting. Please drive home safely and stay dry. I would like to thank Eric, George, and Steve, I believe, have been protecting us this evening. Thank you. We are adjourned. Sorry, Chief.